Well, earlier this week we had the first chance to speak to the new Prime Minister. I asked Theresa May whether we will still receive funding for planned improvements here in places like Peterborough, Lowestoft and Ipswich.
Well, we stand by the infrastructure commitments that have been given by the government in the past. I'm not tearing up commitments that were given under David Cameron's
premiership. So we will see those projects.
I'm not tearing up commitments that were given under David Cameron's premiership. And infrastructure is important. Of course, we have to look going ahead at the infrastructure that we need for the future, for the opportunities that we're going to have as a country once we leave the European Union. We're going to make a success of leaving the EU, and there will be opportunities available to us around the world that we need to grasp to make sure that we get benefits of those economic opportunities and that they are spread across the country, because I want to see an economy that works for everyone, not
so
just
the East won't miss out then. When it comes to investment, when are you going to give the green light to East Anglian devolution?
Well, the consultation has taken place, and obviously the proposals coming forward and the results of that consultation will come forward. Obviously, we've been keen on the devolution deals because of the significant ability they give at local level for the accountability of decisions being taken, but also the power that they give in combining authorities together in terms of investment in the local area. But we'll be looking at the consultation.
Because the plans are waiting now for government approval. So can we see that commitment from you in the next month?
We will be, I won't put a timetable on it, but we will be looking very closely at the proposals that have come forward and obviously at the results of the consultation.
And are you personally excited about them? Because, of course, George Osborne was a great advocate. Do you share his enthusiasm?
The key thing about these, and the reason why George proposed these devolution deals in the first place, was the opportunity it gives at that local level by bringing the power and investment and across a number of areas of government, but also across a region. You can actually focus the decisions that are being taken for the region rather better. You can ensure that there's accountability at that local level as well. So there are real benefits to these devolution deals.
Prime Minister, thank you very much. Heidi Allen, do you take that as a ringing endorsement of devolution?
I think, if I were a poker player, I think perhaps our new Prime Minister maybe won't be pushing ahead with future deals so much as we've seen in the past. I think our deal most definitely is secure.
Absolutely,
yes. I had a meeting with the Chief Executive of South Cambs Council this morning, and it's literally just going through the small print with the Treasury at the moment and DCLG, so that should be signed within the month. So I have no reason to worry at all for our local region. I spoke to Sajid Javid, the Secretary of State for Local Government, 2 weeks ago. Still pressing ahead, Mayor for next year, but I do wonder whether for Theresa going forward in other parts of the country, I don't get the appetite from her there, but certainly for us, yes, we're definitely safe.
Okay, so that's interesting. You're expecting that green light soon. And Daniel Zeichner, will you breathe a sigh of relief when, if it finally happens?
Well, I'll certainly breathe a sigh of relief if we get the money that's been promised to come to housing in Cambridge, which is the key thing as far as I'm concerned. But I think I'd slightly expected the Prime Minister to point out that if we're going to have elections for a directly elected mayor next May, this has got to be done fairly quickly now. There can't be much more delay. And certainly I think there are many of us who think that the elected mayor component of the local devolution deal is something we could all live without.
Do you think the mayor will happen? Two mayors, I mean.
Two mayors, as in one in Suffolk and Norfolk as well. That I can't speak for. No. Our two deals are very, very separate now. We're not together at all. I took some convincing because I don't believe in wasting public money if there isn't a value to something. But actually, when you think about the powers around taxation and spending that person will have, it's probably right, actually, that the people can vote them out if they don't think they're doing a good job. So I've been brought round to the idea. As for Norfolk and Suffolk, I don't know how they're going to proceed at all.
There was a positive commitment there from Theresa May, Daniel Zeichner, about infrastructure. That is good news, is it not?
It is, and I think actually the key moment is going to be the autumn statement, because actually, I think actually Philip Hammond is actually quite a careful potential Chancellor. I think if we get a big commitment on infrastructure investment, that will probably tell us just how worried the government is about our economic prospects, because we will be needing that infrastructure investment to keep the economy alive. Now, I hope that we do get a big investment in infrastructure, but I think it's for the wrong reasons. I think it's because of the economic damage that Brexit is going to be doing to us.
Okay. Heidi Allen, it's a question that Andrew asked in that report. Is your party united?
I think it's as united as you'll ever get with a bunch of people who all have their own agendas and egos.
There is a wry smile there from you. So that
politics.
means not very much.
It's politics. You never get people completely being ducks in a row. But have things calmed down? Are people broadly depuffing their chests and getting on with it? Then yes, they are. And we're not going to please all the people all the time, but I struggle to find people who aren't supporting Theresa May, actually. I think they find her, in all walks of life, to be a great leader. And that gives a boost to the party because we've got a new figurehead sort of leading the way for us.
Daniel Joyce, you know the question that's coming next, don't you? What about Labour? I mean, you've had your conference. Jeremy Corbyn now leading the party. Everyone happy?
Well, strangely enough, I rather agree with Heidi that this applies to Labour as well. We've had a dramatic summer. But actually, I think Jeremy's performance this week was good, was applauded generally. And the Labour Party's always had a wide range of views. I've spent much of my life in the Labour Party encouraging people to concentrate on the things we agree on rather than the things we disagree on. And I think that's what we'll probably see happening now. So I think actually we'll see the parties coming back together again. And that's probably a good thing. And
if there's one thing we're going to learn about Theresa May's Premiership conference, what do you think it will be, Heidi Allen?
I'll tell you what I hope it'll be. I hope it'll be building on the speech we heard outside number 10 about that sharing prosperity and that politicians having to look after everyone, because I don't think that's happened enough.
OK, more from both of you in just a moment. Now, though, to a tale of two cities, both with the same problem, traffic congestion. Charging people to park at work has been such a success in Nottingham that Cambridge plans to follow suit. And this is the final week for the public to have their say. But as you might expect, not everyone is keen to pay. Here's Hannah Olsen.
Two cities with the same problem, congestion. But one had a plan for tackling it, and now the other could follow their route.
Back in 2012, Nottingham introduced a workplace parking levy to pay for this extension to the tram system. Each business with more than 10 employee parking spaces must pay the City Council £1.50 per space per day. So far, that's raised more than £34 million.
Improving public transport through a workplace parking levy is something that could now be coming to Cambridge. So the big question is it working?
I think it is. Certainly we've got a new tram route and it is very, very popular. It's the most popular tram in the country. But secondly, Nottingham is one of the few cities in the country where car usership in the city has gone down.
Over in Cambridge, the City Deal team is also hoping charging for some employee parking spaces could be a way to stop people using their cars and raise funds for improving public transport.
Employers have a key role in cutting congestion. It affects them, it's affecting the prosperity of Cambridge. We've already got too many cars at peak times, and there's going to be more if we don't intervene. So the workplace parking levy is to start a discussion with employers, because we've got to find ways that employees can get in and out of their workplace, but not by car.
Even with lessons learnt from Nottingham, it could be 3 to 5 years before a workplace parking levy is introduced here in Cambridge. There's an estimated 50,000 business parking spaces like these around the city, which could generate up to £11 million a year to be spent on local transport. So City Deal bosses will be keen to get businesses on board as soon as possible. However, if the businesses I've spoken to are anything to go by, they could have their work cut out.
This hotel manager in Cambridge has already been doing the sums.
I have about 55 members of staff, so we're talking, I probably have about 20, 30 people parking a day, or that's the maximum amount that will park. So I could be facing charges of £6,000 to £9,000, which is, just unacceptable. I cannot maintain my business with those sort of costs.
The chief executive of the Cambridgeshire Chamber of Commerce felt so strongly against the idea of a workplace parking levy that he resigned from the City Deal board.
What we're seeing with a workplace parking levy is just a tax on business, because the purpose is to try and reduce congestion in Cambridge, one of the key things that we all know we need to do. But very regretfully, workplace parking levy does not reduce congestion. All it does is put a charge on businesses which can only be described as a tax.
Back in Nottingham, businesses there had similar concerns when the scheme was introduced. So, 4 years later, have emotions died down? Tony Hogg runs a plumbing merchants on the outskirts of the city and says it costs him £10,000 a year.
We don't feel we've got anything for it apart from it's another admin job. We have to manage it. We have to add people on and take people off. And it's a bill we could well do without.
Because what could £10,000 do for your business? What is that sort of cost?
Well, you know, we're always being asked to take on apprentices, and, you know, I think this business has had a good record of doing that, you know, and £10,000 goes a long way in that sort of marketplace.
The levy may have delivered the tram network in Nottingham, but it'll be next year before we find out whether Cambridge decides to get on board and use a similar scheme to improve public transport there.
Daniel Zeichner, good idea? Bad idea?
It's complicated trying to find ways of tackling congestion, but since I was elected 18 months ago, every time I talk to business, they talk to me about the difficulties caused by congestion. So the problem is we can't leave it as it is. This is one of the levers you can use, but the big thing to ensure is that people have got a choice. You can't force people out their cars unless there's something else for them to use. The question is, how do you pay for that? And the workplace parking levy could make a big difference. What it might do, for instance, is reverse the very foolish mess that the county council has made of the park and ride charges. Get people back on the park and ride. Now, personally, I think...
And scrap that £1 charge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, central government, I'm afraid, have put county councils in an almost impossible position. So this is actually replacing the money that's been lost locally. But it's got to be raised somehow, and we can't leave things as they are.
I mean, all this has been prompted by the city deal, hasn't it, Heidi Allen, and this sort of idea that we must cut congestion. But do you think the parking levy is the right way to do that?
Well, it's a bit like you've got to break some eggs to make an omelette, haven't you? This is a difficulty. If you've got, as Daniel says, that alternative transport to offer people, then they do have a choice. What do you do in the meantime while the transport isn't yet in place and people have got to get to work? And alarm bells go off in my head, although I kind of like the theory of it when I think of big organisations like Apple or Microsoft. But when you think of schools, people earning modest wages, are the employers really going to pass that down?
Well, this was the point made in the package by John Bridge, wasn't it? You know, this is a tax on business, he suggests. Would you agree with that?
Well, it is. Now, I rarely want to disagree with my friend John Bridge on this, but I do think actually that he would be the first to say we've got to tackle the problems of congestion. There may be other ways of doing it as well, but this is one of the things that is available to our local authorities at the moment. That's why they're talking to people. Now, there can be lots of discussion about where the exemptions lie, which areas should be used. But it's interesting, actually. I was looking at Cambridge Assessment. At the moment, have hundreds and hundreds of parking places. Their new building is going to have fewer parking places. That's without the working, without the levy. But those people coming in will need public transport, and unless there's resources to pay for it, it's not going to work. So this has got to be seen as part of a wider package. Unless you get the public transport improvements, then it would just be a tax on business and motorists. But if you get the improvements, actually that's good for everybody.
I mean, Heidi Allen, you know what it's like to run a business, don't you? I mean, can you sympathise with the person we heard in the report saying, you know, it's £10,000 parking levy or an apprentice, you know, that's my choice.
And what I found interesting listening to him was that he said that his business was on the edge of the town. Yeah. And I wonder, therefore, if he's going to see less benefit. The people running businesses right in the middle, where services, customers can't get to them, they're meeting, people coming to their organisations are like, it's too difficult, I can't get into Cambridge. The people in the centre will perhaps feel more benefit. But I think, like all these things, one of the biggest criticisms I have of the city deal, and in part it's not their fault because the amount of money they've been given to begin with is very modest, we're not seeing strategic planning here. It's little piecemeal pieces of project to try and ease the congestion. I want to see, for example, I'm going to ask the question of Sajid Javid, can we extend the deadline of the city deal money into the devolution period and combine the infrastructure funding that we have so that we can do some really exciting things? Because otherwise we're just going to be doing lots of little projects and it's just, you know, they're sticky plasters.
Do you agree with that? I mean,
I do, and this is what I've said from the beginning. There was a point when the city deal was quite a big scheme. It's actually been reduced down, and now it's really an old-fashioned set of capital projects which have to be spent by a certain amount of time, or the local councils lose the money. I don't blame the local councils; they're trying to do the best they can, but there is a lack of big vision. Who knows if the Chancellor really does come forward with big infrastructure money in the autumn statement, then perhaps this can be revisited and looked at again.
Okay, it's something we'll have to watch. Now for our political roundup of the week with Deborah McGurran, in which one of our MPs is less than happy at 11th hour changes. Here it comes, all in 60 seconds.
The cost of clearing up unauthorised traveller sites in Bedfordshire came to more than £100,000 last year. Travellers are calling for more permanent sites.
The difficulty is finding somewhere that is acceptable both to the planning regime and to the local population and to gypsies and travellers.
Peterborough Council is having to house homeless people in travel lodges. It's spending more than £1 million a year on emergency housing for up to 400 people in B&Bs, hostels and travel lodge hotels. Labour MEP Richard Howitt received a standing ovation after delivering his farewell speech to conference before he steps down next month.
Conference, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Remember, always Labour.
But Shadow Defence Secretary Clive Lewis was not as delighted with his moment centre stage, when it emerged that his speech had been changed at the last moment and he was only told by text.
I want to pick up on the fact that homeless people are being housed in the travel lodge in Peterborough, Heidi Allen. I mean, is that what you get for not enough social housing?
Well, of course, more social housing always helps with these things, but I do believe you can avoid that. You know, I'm particularly proud of my offices in South Cambs. We are, I believe, the best, if not one of the best local authorities in the whole of the country for managing homelessness. My offices, they get on the phone to the bailiffs, they talk to the mortgage companies, they do an incredible job. So yes, facilities are tight, but with the right officers really looking after people, then there's a way around it, and we do very, very well at that.
Not so well in Cambridge, is it, Daniel Zeichner? I mean, there is a big homeless problem there. Is social housing, is that just the answer?
Well, the causes of street homelessness are complicated, but the truth is, since the coalition government, we've seen street homelessness rocket in this country. I saw it on the streets of Liverpool this week. You can see it at any time in cities like Cambridge. And what it all shows, I'm afraid, is that if you make cuts, in the end, you end up paying for it another way. That's why they're having to buy hotel places in Peterborough. Simple truth is, austerity doesn't work, and Jeremy Corbyn's government would do this very differently.
There you are. A Jeremy Corbyn government would solve the problem then, Heidi Allen.
Well, I think there's probably actually a middle way. Yes, more social housing is, of course, always going to be a great thing, something I'm pushing for in South Cambs. But actually, for me, I would look at the local authorities, I would look for make efficiencies in the management structures and the way we run them. And the devolution deal, I think, will give us an opportunity to do that. And I think there is meat on the bone there. We can do that before we cut frontline services. I'm convinced of that.
OK, just briefly then, Daniel Zeichner, what are the obstacles to that way forward then?
Well, the obstacle is political choice. Yes, of course we need much more social housing, much more council housing. Hasn't happened under this government. We'll need a change of government to make it happen.
OK, Daniel Zeichner and Heidi Allen, thank you both very much indeed for joining us.